Welcome to our channel. We hope you will have a wonderful learning experience here with us. You can download and listen to these audiobooks at your preferred time. Our videos are designed as audio podcasts to help you keep studying at times where you may not be able to watch video or as you are completing another task. So, you can better use your time. You can listen to these tutorials at night, doing another task, while taking a walk, lunchtime, or at any of your convenience. This is the first part of freshman inclusiveness course taught in all the Ethiopian universities. It is tailored exactly to the fitting of the Ethiopian Ministry of Education curriculum but is also very useful for any related course. I am very happy you have chosen this channel in your study and politely ask that you subscribe, like and share the channel for more amazing tutorials. Now, without further ado, let's begin our course. Chapter 1. Understanding Disabilities and Vulnerabilities. 1.1 Definitions of Basic Terms. Impairment, Disability and Handicap. Impairment means a lack, abnormality of an anatomic, physiological or psychological structure or function or deviation on a person. It refers to any loss or abnormality of physiological, psychological or anatomical structure or function. It is the absence of particular body part or organ. It could also a condition in which the body exists but does not function. Some children, for instance, have impairments such as eyes that do not see well, arms and legs that are deformed, or a brain not developing in a typical way, etc. Disability. The term disability is ambiguous as there is no single agreement on the concept. The concept of disability is complex, dynamic, multidimensional, and contested. WHO and World Bank, 2011. The full inclusion of people with impairments in society can be inhibited by 1. Attitudinal, societal barriers, such as stigma. 2. Physical barriers, environmental barriers, such as absence of stairs. And 3. Policy barriers, systemic barriers, where all together can create a disabling effect and inhibit disability-inclusive development. They are disabling factors. If these problems addressed, impairment may not lead to disability, where all together can create a disabling effect and inhibit disability-inclusive development. Societal, environmental, and systemic barriers are the most popular disabling factors. What is disability? 1. Medical approach. Disability is pathology, physiological, biological and intellectual. Disability means functional limitations due to physical, intellectual or psychic impairment, health or psychic disorders on a person. WHO Com in 1996. The medical definition has given rise to the idea that people are individual objects to be treated, changed or improved and made more normal. The medical definition views the disabled person as needing to fit in rather than thinking about how society itself should change. This medical definition does not adequately explain the interaction between societal conditions or expectations and unique circumstances of an individual. The social definition of disability. A sense disability is a highly varied and complex condition with a range of implications for social identity and behavior. A sense disability largely depends on the context and is a consequence of discrimination, prejudice and exclusion. A sense emphasizes the shortcomings in the environment and in many organized activities in society, for example on information, communication and education, which prevent persons with disabilities from participating on equal terms. Causes of disability. What do you think is the causes of disability? Some people, especially in the past times, wrongly believe that disability is a punishment from God. There are some who still believe that disability is a form of personal punishment for individual with disability, a kind of karma for their past mistakes, which is totally unacceptable nowadays. Diseases, illnesses, and overexposure to X-rays can cause a genetic disorder. 1. Environmental poverty and malnutrition in pregnant mothers can cause a deficiency in vital minerals and result in deformation issues in the unborn child. After birth, poverty and malnutrition can also cause poor development of vital organs in the child, which can eventually lead to disability. The use of drugs, alcohol, tobacco, the exposure to certain toxic chemicals and illnesses, toxoplasmosis, cytomegalovirus, Rubella and syphilis by a pregnant mother can cause intellectual disability to the child. Childhood diseases such as a whooping cough, measles, and chicken pox may lead to meningitis and encephalitis. This can cause damage to the brain of the child. Toxic material such as lead and mercury can damage the brain too. Unfortunate life events such as drowning, automobile accidents, falls and so on can result in people losing their sight, hearing, limbs and other vital parts of their body and cause disability. 2. Unknown causes. The human body is a phenomenal thing. Scientists have still not figured out what and how some things in the body, cells, brain, and genes come about. Humans have still not found all the answers to all the defects in the human body. 3. Inaccessible environments. Sometimes society makes it difficult for people with some impairment to function freely. When society develops infrastructure such as houses, roads, parks and other public places without consideration to people with impairment, they basically make it impossible for them to take care of themselves. For example, if a school is built with a ramp in addition to stairs, it makes it easy for people with wheelchairs to move about freely. This way, their impairment is not made worse. Lack of education, support services, health and opportunities for people with impairment can cause additional disability to people with disabilities and even people with no disability. Some type of disabilities. Some 9 major disabilities are listed and briefly discussed in the coming pages below. 1. Visual impairment. Visual impairment in general designates 2 subclassifications. These are blindness and low vision. A sense blindness, total or partial inability to see because of disease or disorder of the eye, optic nerve, or brain. The term blindness typically refers to vision loss that is not correctable with eyeglasses or contact lenses. Blindness may not mean a total absence of sight, however. Some people who are considered blind may be able to perceive slowly moving lights or colors. The term low vision is used for moderately impaired vision. People with low vision may have a visual impairment that affects only central vision at the area directly in front of the eyes or peripheral vision at the area to either side of and slightly behind the eyes. 2. Hearing impairment. Different people define the term hearing impairment differently. The definitions given to hearing impairment convey different meaning to different people. Different definitions and terminologies may be used in different countries for different purpose. Paysanella and carried from legal point of view, define hearing impairment as a generic term indicating a continuum of hearing loss from mild to profound, which includes the subclassifications of the hard of hearing and deaf. Hard of hearing. A hearing impairment, whether permanent or fluctuating, which adversely affects a child's educational performance but which is not included under the definition of deaf. Whelan. This term can also be used to describe persons with enough, usually with hearing aids, as a primary modality of acquisition of language and in communication with others. Deaf, those who have difficulty understanding speech, even with hearing aids but can successfully communicate in sign language. Cultural definitions of deafness, on the other hand, emphasize an individual's various abilities, use of sign language, and connections with the culturally deaf community. 3. Specific learning disability. Specific learning disability means a disorder in one or more of the basic psychological processes involved in understanding or in using language, spoken or written, that may manifest itself in the imperfect ability to listen, think, speak, read, write, spell, or to do mathematical calculations. The term includes such conditions as perceptual disabilities, brain injury, minimal brain dysfunction, dyslexia, and developmental aphasia. The term does not include learning problems that are primarily the result of visual, hearing, or motor disabilities, of intellectual disability, of emotional disturbance, or of environmental, cultural, or economic disadvantage. Learning disabilities should not be confused with learning problems which are primarily the result of visual, hearing, or motor handicaps, of intellectual disability, of emotional disturbance, or of environmental, cultural, or economic disadvantages. Generally speaking, people with learning disabilities are of average or above average intelligence. There often appears to be a gap between the individual's potential and actual achievement. This is why learning disabilities are referred to as hidden disabilities. The person looks perfectly normal and seems to be a very bright and intelligent person, yet may be unable to demonstrate the skill level expected from someone of a similar age. A learning disability cannot be cured or fixed. It is a lifelong challenge. However, with appropriate support and intervention, people with learning disabilities can achieve success in school, at work, in relationships, and in the community. Types of specific learning disabilities: auditory processing disorder, APD, also known as central auditory processing disorder. This is a condition that adversely affects how sound that travels unimpeded through the ear is processed or interpreted by the brain. Individuals with APD do not recognize subtle differences between sounds and words, even when the sounds are loud and clear enough to be heard. They can also find it difficult to tell where sounds are coming from, to make sense of the order of sounds, or to block out competing background noises. Dyscalculia. Dyscalculia is a specific learning disability that affects a person's ability to understand numbers and learn math. Individuals with this type of LD may also have poor comprehension of math symbols, may struggle with memorizing and organizing numbers, have difficulty telling time, or have trouble with counting. Dysgraphia. Dyscalculia is a specific learning disability that affects a person's handwriting ability and fine motor skills. Problems may include illegible handwriting, inconsistent spacing, poor spatial planning on paper, poor spelling, and difficulty composing writing as well as thinking and writing at the same time. Dyslexia. Dyslexia is a specific learning disability that affects reading and related language-based processing skills. The severity can differ in each individual but can affect reading fluency, decoding, reading comprehension, recall, writing, spelling, and sometimes speech, and can exist along with other related disorders. Dyslexia is sometimes referred to as a language-based learning disability. Language processing disorder. Language processing disorder is a specific type of auditory processing disorder, APD, in which there is difficulty attaching meaning to sound groups that form words, sentences and stories. While an APD affects the interpretation of all sounds coming into the brain, a language processing disorder, LPD, relates only to the processing of language. LPD can affect expressive language and/or receptive language. Nonverbal learning disabilities. Nonverbal learning disabilities is a disorder which is usually characterized by a significant discrepancy between higher verbal skills and weaker motor, visual, spatial and social skills. Typically, an individual with NLD, or NVLD, has trouble interpreting nonverbal cues like facial expressions or body language, and may have poor coordination. Visual perceptual, visual motor deficit. Visual perceptual, visual motor deficit is a disorder that affects the understanding of information that a person sees, or the ability to draw or copy. A characteristic seen in people with learning disabilities such as dysgraphia or nonverbal LD. It can result in missing subtle differences in shapes or printed letters, losing place frequently, struggles with cutting, holding pencil too tightly, or poor eye-hand coordination. Speech and language impairment. Speech and language impairment means a communication disorder such as stuttering, impaired articulation, language impairment, or a voice impairment that adversely affects a child's educational performance. It is a disorder that adversely affects the child's ability to talk, understand, read, and write. This disability category can be divided into two groups: speech impairments and language impairments. Speech impairments. There are three basic types of speech impairments: articulation disorders, fluency disorders, and voice disorders. Articulation disorders are errors in the production of speech sounds that may be related to anatomical or physiological limitations in the skeletal, muscular, or neuromuscular support for speech production. These disorders include accent omissions, bo for boat, accent substitutions, wabbit for rabbit, accent distortions, schlip for sip. Fluency disorders are difficulties with the rhythm and timing of speech characterized by hesitations, repetitions, or prolongations of sounds, syllables, words, or phrases. Common fluency disorders include accent stuttering, rapid-fire repetitions of consonant or vowel sounds especially at the beginning of words, prolongations, hesitations, interjections, and complete verbal blocks. Accent cluttering, excessively fast and jerky speech. Voice disorders are problems with the quality or use of one's voice resulting from disorders in the larynx. Voice disorders are characterized by abnormal production and/or absences of vocal quality, pitch, loudness, resonance, and/or duration. Language impairments. There are 5 basic areas of language impairments: phonological disorders, morphological disorders, semantic disorders, syntactical deficits, and pragmatic difficulties. Phonological disorders are defined as the abnormal organization of the phonological system, or a significant deficit in speech production or perception. A child with a phonological disorder may be described as hard to understand or as not saying the sounds correctly. Apraxia of speech is a specific phonological disorder where the student may want to speak but has difficulty planning what to say and the motor movements to use. Morphological disorders are defined as difficulties with morphological inflections, inflections on nouns, verbs, and adjectives that signal different kinds of meanings. Semantic disorders are characterized by poor vocabulary development, inappropriate use of word meanings, and/or inability to comprehend word meanings. These students will demonstrate restrictions in word meanings, difficulty with multiple word meanings, excessive use of non-specific terms, for example, thing and stuff, and indefinite references, for example, that and there. Syntactic deficits are characterized by difficulty in acquiring the rules that govern word order and other aspects of grammar such as subject-verb agreement. Typically, these students produce shorter and less elaborate sentences with fewer cohesive conjunctions than their peers. Pragmatic difficulties are characterized as problems in understanding and using language in different social contexts. These students may lack an understanding of the rules for making eye contact, respecting personal space, requesting information, and introducing topics. Inclusive life for persons with speech and language difficulties. 5. Autism. Autism means a developmental disability significantly affecting verbal and nonverbal communication and social interaction, generally evident before age 3, that adversely affects a child's educational performance. Other characteristics often associated with autism are engaging in repetitive activities and stereotyped movements, resistance to environmental change or change in daily routines, and unusual responses to sensory experiences. The term autism does not apply if the child's educational performance is adversely affected primarily because the child has an emotional disturbance, as defined in number 5 below. A child who shows the characteristics of autism after age 3 could be diagnosed as having autism if the criteria above are satisfied. Autism is a neurodevelopment disorder defined by impairments in social and communication development, accompanied by stereotyped patterns of behavior and interest. Autism is pervasive developmental disorder characterized by lack of normal sociability, impaired communication and repetitive obsessive behavior such as politeness, turn-taking. Linked to profound learning disability, PLDs, are further impairments in the production of speech. Among these are 1. Personal pronouns reversal, for instance the use of I instead of you and vice versa. 2. The misuse of such prepositions as in, on, under, next to and. 3. The prevalence, in speech, of echolalia formal repetition of other utterances. Children with autism vary literally in their use of words. Communication deficiencies may leave a lasting mark of social retardation on the child. The link between social skills and language is made evident by the often spontaneous appearance of affectionate independent behavior in these children after they have been trained to speak. 6. Emotional and behavioral disorders. According to Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, the term emotional and behavioral disorders means a condition exhibiting one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time and to a marked degree that adversely affects educational performance. 1. An inability to learn that cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors. 2. An inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships with peers and teachers. 3. Inappropriate types of behavior or feelings under normal circumstances. 4. A general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression or 5. a tendency to develop physical symptoms or fears associated with personal or school problems. Classification of behavioral and emotional disorders. An individual having behavioral or emotional disorders can exhibit widely varied types of behavior. Therefore, different classification systems of behavioral and emotional disorders can be used for special education. Different professionals have developed a classification system, which shows some promise for educational practice. These include: a sense conduct disorder. Individuals may seek attention, are disruptive and act out. The disorder is classified by type: overt, with violence or tantrums, versus covert, with lying, stealing, and/or drug use. A sense socialized aggression. Individuals join subculture group of peers who are openly disrespectful to their peers, teachers, and parents. Common are delinquency and dropping out of school. Early symptoms include stealing, running away from home, habitual lying, cruelty to animals, and fire setting. A sense attention problems. These individuals may have attention deficit, are easily destructible and have poor concentration. They are frequently impulsive and may not think the consequence of their actions. A sense anxiety/withdrawn. These individuals are self-conscious, reserved, and unsure of themselves. They typically have low self-esteem and withdraw from immediate activities. They are also anxious and frequently depressed. A sense psychotic behavior. These individuals show more bizarre behavior. They may hallucinate, deal in a fantasy world, and may even talk in gibberish. A sense motor excess. These students are hyperactive. They cannot sit nor listen to others nor keep their attention focused. Kaufman, 1993, conclude that emotion or behavioral disorders fall into two broad classifications. 1. Externalizing behavior, also called under-controlled disorder, include such problems: disobedience, disruptiveness, fighting, tempers tantrums, irresponsibility, jealous, anger, attention-seeking etc. 2. Internalizing behavior, also known as over-controlled disorders, include such problems: anxiety, immaturity, shyness, social withdrawal, feeling of inadequacy, inferiority, guilt, depression, and worries a great deal.